All right. I'm here today. My name's Alan Armstrong, and I'm one of the committee members who agreed to do some interviews as part of our music and melodies conversations with composers for Phi Beta Mu. And I'm joined today by old friend Jay Bocook. Jay and I actually met because of drum corps many years ago. But as a young band director, I was fortunate to um, have the chance to play a lot of his literature over the years, and we're gonna just kind of explore some things. Jay, we talked about the drum corps thing a few minutes ago, but I don't think I've ever told you this. I actually became aware of you as a kid in high school from the Jensen publication albums because I was fascinated with those things. My band directors would leave them laying around, and I would pick them up and go put them on and listen to them. And you and Wayne Downey and let's see, Will Rapp, I think, were writing a bunch of stuff. So I became aware of you, and I think I'll get you in just a second just to kind of go through that because that was when you were at Travelers Rest, I think. Um,
Where it
but
started.
yeah. But if you will, just one of the things a lot of folks want to know is how you did get started. Tell us a little bit about your background and experience in the band world. As a student, and then how you got started.
Well, again, hey, Alan, thanks for having me. I love just talking about this stuff. It's kind of nostalgic, and you remember some things that have stayed with you all through the years. I've had an incredible experience in the band world. They say find something you like and you never work a day in your life. Well, I found that, and it's band and music. Um, I I came through a terrific high school band program in Largo, Florida. You might have heard of it. Some of the old guys have heard of the Band of Gold.
Yep.
Right at the beginning of that was when I went through it. So I had such great influence from my director, Robert Cotter Sr., and it just meant the world to me. And I knew, well, actually, I knew before. I knew in middle school I was going to be a musician because I couldn't do anything else very well. So, so I had a great experience there, and this was right at the beginning of when the drum corps style of marching band was hitting marching bands, high school bands, and we were one of the first bands to make that transfer because my high school band director had been through the senior corps experience for a number of years. So it was terrific to go through that program to see the discipline, the community, the excitement of the community as the program grew and got better, and what a high school band could actually generate was amazing to me. So I went off to college having just a terrific experience. In fact, I wrote my first few arrangements when I was a high school student because my director, Robert Cotter, said, "Sure, go ahead and try it. We'll go ahead and play it." His son, Bob Cotter,
Right.
also a very well published arranger of the day, was writing charts for the high school band. And at that point, I didn't know people that wrote music, marching music, were still alive. It's like Beethoven. I didn't. I thought these were some special. I didn't know that ordinary citizens could write these things, pencil and paper. So I wrote a few in high school, and they were absolutely terrible. But I learned a lot from it, and I knew that it was fascinating. Writing music was fascinating to me. I'd gone through a couple of years of theory classes, so I had some background. I also played a lot of rock and roll growing up, uh, and I used to write out arrangements, Chicago style, blood, sweat, and tears style for the horns, and learn how to learn some. Got some chops from doing transcriptions of some of those tunes.
Right.
But when I went off to college, and I went to Furman University in Greenville, South Carolina, small liberal arts school, but was really encouraged by their band director, Dan Ellis, who recognized that I was from a band that had moved to this drum corps style marching band, and he wanted to see what that was about. And so immediately I got leadership roles. But my second year, I was drum major, and the rest of the 3 years. And by the end, I was writing all the arrangements and doing the drill for the Furman Marching Band. And they had some tremendous success because, well, as you know, the drum corps style brings it to the audience. The previous pageantry style was just kind of up and down the field. counter marches and stuff. And that was very popular in South Carolina with the high school bands at that time. So it immediately got the audience involved and general effect and so forth.
Right. And then as you finished at
I'm
Furman,
sorry.
yeah, it's our connection's breaking up a little bit, I think. The As you finished at Furman, and then
I got you.
did you go to
Right.
grad school? Did
I,
you go on to
I
teaching?
did. Uh, the Furman band played the state contest exhibition my senior year, and one of the judges was a gentleman named Jack White, who was the director of bands at what's now University of Louisiana Monroe.
Okay.
And he asked my band director who wrote that music, all that music, and he said, "I'll introduce you to the kid." So I went up after the show, met with Jack White, and he said, "Come down and write our arrangements, and that's your assistantship, and get your master's." So I went to it was then Northeast Louisiana University, and his band was huge, you know, all of kind of like a Jack State in that day.
Right.
Uh, they really hadn't made the transition yet, but they wanted to as well. So I was in the right place at the right time with the right group. Great players, huge band. I could basically try anything I wanted with them, and that was my job.
Yeah.
Um, so even though I did both degrees in education, I was at both places taking every composition course that I could. And really, that was my first. Okay, it's yours. It's not somebody else's. Where I had that experience, because before that it was all arrangements.
Right.
After I finished grad school, then I started teaching, and that's really all I wanted to be, was try to be a great band director. I really didn't think the music was really kind of on the side thing. So I got a job back in South Carolina, a little community in the upstate called Travelers Rest,
Right.
and taught there for 3 years. Had some success, some very good success there. Proud of the way that town, that community, and those kids responded. I was brand new as a teacher. I probably made so many mistakes, but somehow I got through it, and we had some success. In the meantime, this is an odd story, but it's probably worth your listeners' time. In those days, the colleges would do recruiting LPs, record albums of their season, to send them out to recruit. So they give one to all the high school band directors. Well, we did that at Northeast Louisiana, and most of the arrangements were mine that were on that record. And so the band directors in Louisiana were going to Ted Frank's Music in New Orleans, a powerful music store at the time, and were asking, they wanted to buy these arrangements. Well, of course, they weren't published. They were just one-offs. They were specials. And
Right.
so and so the people at Ted Frank's Music reached out to all the publishers at that time and said, somebody's got to publish this kid's music, because band directors are coming in and asking for it. So I wasn't even trying to get published. It just, they came to me, and I got letters from a couple of companies that said, send us your portfolio. I'm in my first year of teaching in the fall. And I'm getting letters saying, put a portfolio of your arrangements together. Oh, I didn't have a portfolio. I had this and that, but I was not prepared for this. So
Right.
I didn't even respond. Again, right place at the right time. A new company had started up called Jensen Publications. They were brand new. They were a spinoff of Hal Leonard. Three Hal Leonard executives left Hal Leonard and started Jensen Publications in Milwaukee. And their most powerful writer was a gentleman named John Higgins.
Yep.
I'm sure you know that name.
And then
Great
John. Yep.
arranger, great arranger, and I knew his work. It was just terrific. Well, he called me one day and said, "I don't want to see a portfolio. We want you to write for us. I heard the record." I was like, "Okay." So just like that, it happened. That's the thing. Uh, the education here is opportunities are always going to be there. You got to be prepared for them when they get there.
Yeah.
That's
You just never know where it's going to come from.
it's going to happen. And when it is, are you prepared enough to do it? And I said, sure, I can do. he said, "Can you do 5 arrangements for the coming album in next year?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "By the way, we want one original." And I'd never thought about writing an original at that time. But you know, in style at that time were the what we used to call the Latin openers and that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And they're all kind of based on 3 chords. And I did one of those, and it turned out to be actually a big hit. My very first year of publishing, and in that first year, Jensen Publications became the biggest band print company in the world. They bypassed Hal Leonard.
Oh, wow.
And that's where those albums you're talking about came from. They came
Yeah.
from starting right then. Um, and then we started doing marching band with live college bands on the
Yep.
field, actually on the field. It's an idea I had because I'd seen people do stuff with that at DCI. Now there are recorders that could record stereo beautifully. So we
Yep.
started doing those, and that changed the world. One studio recordings, they were 350-piece marching bands in Oklahoma Stadium, for example.
Yep.
So I know it took a long time to get there, but that's how I got
No, that's
from
that,
teaching.
but yeah, but that's a great segue. You mentioned that that's you guys started with Jensen, and then when I was at Jacksonville State. You mentioned earlier, and I think Hal Leonard actually came and did some stuff with us, and you guys were using I think Oklahoma or Oklahoma State, in that era.
Yeah, we used Northeast Louisiana, we used Oklahoma University, and we used Furman University because after staying 2 years as 3 years at Travelers Rest, they asked me to come. Jensen asked me to come to Milwaukee to become their band editor, and I was 26 years old, and now I'm you can't say no to that,
No,
right? I love teaching at Travelers Rest. The band was getting better and better and better, and I hated to leave, but you can't say no to that opportunity. So I did that, and I left teaching, moved to Milwaukee, and worked in the office in Milwaukee of Jensen Publications, and that's where we pioneered these live albums. As you mentioned before, this state of the art edition, the Wayne Downey
right,
Will Rap series. Those were all brand new, and to band directors, those albums in the early 80s, late 70s were like the Sears toy catalog coming, at Christmas. Band directors couldn't wait to get their hands on these because they were so different. And the kids fell in love with them too in the
yep,
band. And I
yep.
still get people asking for those recordings.
Oh,
You know,
those were some, and
crazy.
there were some great charts and some great recordings of those bands for sure. When did you really
Yeah.
start working towards the concert band composition side of things?
Well, like I mentioned, I took every composition class that I could take, independent studies and that kind of stuff. And those were all great. But I didn't really get thrown into the concert band side of it until I worked at Jensen because that was part of my job. I had to put together the concert catalog and the marching catalog
Got it.
and coordinate with all the writers, hire new writers. Uh, and those are some interesting experiences too, dealing with the writers. But it wasn't until I got in that context. John Higgins was, who I'd mentioned before, was working there, and some project came up, an arrangement project, and there was nobody assigned to it. And John said, You just do it." I said, "What do you mean? I've never done concert band stuff." He goes, "What's the difference? Sitting down instead of standing up. There's no difference." So that's how I got into it, was doing at first arrangements for concert band,
Got it.
at different levels. Um, the publisher levels all have different ranges for a grade 2, different ranges for a 3, a 4.
Right.
Rhythmic variations. You got to make sure you stay in your lane when you're writing for those lower grades. But that's how I started. And in terms of composition, it wasn't until my second year at Jensen Publications and my old Phi Mu Alpha fraternity from Furman University called me and said, would you do a commission original piece for Phi Mu Alpha? for the Furman Symphonic Band. I said, I guess. I was kind of thrown into it. And all of a sudden, I was writing an original piece, and that was my first one. My first original concert work was in 1982, in the spring of 1982, and it was daunting, but it was really fun because you can do so much more in terms of orchestration than you can do outside. Uh, nuance stuff. So it was a piece called "Fanfare and Hymn of Brotherhood," and it was again for the Phi Mu Alpha music fraternity at Furman University. That's was my first original piece.
Got it. As you came through school, were there any specific pieces? You mentioned a little bit about the college bands and those kinds of things, but were there any specific pieces that you really latched onto that made you? You said you knew you wanted to be a musician. You kind of fell into the writing thing, but were there any specific pieces or composers that kind of inspired you in that process?
Yeah, there was a ton. And I bet I'm like a lot of your listeners and yourself. When I was a kid growing up in band, I would just, sit in the middle of the band playing my saxophone, and I'd hear this sound, and I'd say, I got to know what that is. How do you make that sound? Is so awesome. And I go up to the score and look at it and see, okay, the trombones are voiced like this, and the horns are like this. But there were a lot of super influential works for me. We can get into them, I guess, a little bit and just trying to think them through. Um, the H. Owen Reed um, Mexicana. What is that piece?
Yeah. La Fiesta Mexicana.
La Fiesta Mexicana was a big influence on me. Some of Clifton Williams, the works were shorter but very, very impactful. I was lucky to grow up in a time when those pieces were new, variations, Korean folk song, all of John Barnes' chances literature just blew me away. And I was playing it brand new and, and was very influential. I knew these guys were still alive and still working and still writing. And it just inspired me very, very much. And my band directors, both Dan Ellis at Furman and Jack White at Northeast Louisiana, were intense on playing great new literature at a time when a lot of college bands were playing very old transcriptions, and that stuff. But these guys wanted to play the newest, freshest stuff, and it just meant the world to me to be able to play it.
And that's one of the reasons we wanted to start this whole interview series is we wanted to talk to some of the composers, who are still with us and active in the environment and let people, get their take on things rather than playing those, there's nothing wrong with some of the old war horses, but
No,
it's
they're
nice
not.
to, it's nice to have that fresh voice and to be able to talk to the people who created the music as it existed as it was being made.
Right.
Um,
As a high school senior, I witnessed a performance, not of my band, but of another band playing Nellie Bell's Tritico, and it was completely transformative to me. I lost my mind. I thought that was the coolest, hippest music I'd ever heard in my life. I was a high school kid. I didn't know what the devices he was using were, but I know it took me to a completely different place.
do you remember what band it was that played it?
I think it was the Clearwater High School band.
Okay. All right. There were some really fun bands down in Florida in that era, I know.
It could have been the Seminole High School band, but it was at a festival we played in, and we were just listening as audience members.
Right.
I think it was
Yeah.
Clearwater, but it could have been Seminole.
Got
But
it.
those were both very fine bands.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Um, when you're writing, how do you think about balancing your understanding of being creative with the limitations that you deal with? You mentioned earlier some of the range and those kinds of things, because you have written at a wide variety, almost every level, and that's been one of the fun things for me as a director when I came through is you had music at every level for every kid. But how do you balance those limitations that you get with your creative juices?
It's tough. I always tell people that writing music for grades one, two, and even three sometimes are like trying to play the piano with your middle two fingers taped together. It just has certain limitations that have to be. There's just the box looks like this for each one of those, and you just
Right.
have to stay inside the box. So as long as you know that that's the box, you can still have some cool ideas and stuff that can be very musical. It just doesn't go out of its lane. Uh, it, one note maybe does, or one rhythm maybe does, but in general, you just it's a tough balancing thing to do. For me, it's very hard to write original music at grade one and two.
Yes.
There, the boxes are so small of what they can and can't do. I think there are a lot better people that can do that than me, because I just I just think it's got to go here. It's got to do this, and it can't do this, you
Right.
know. And
Yeah. It's
I don't like making, it's like people when they do arrangements of tunes, when they do arrangement for grade one or grade two, it almost can sound nothing like the original because they're outside of the box. Something about the original is outside of the box. So
it
I've not ever published a grade one. I've done two or three grade twos and tons of grade three. From grade three on up, I'm very comfortable.
Right. Yeah. Grade three on up is, I taught early on. I did a little bit of middle school, but my primarily was dealing with high schools, and
Right.
early in the career it was younger high school. So it was that grade three, grade four range. And then as I moved on, then, playing some of the more advanced literature. Um, you were, because of really, I think the era, mine and your age, you were primarily commercially published, but how do you feel about the opportunities, young composers now have to self-publish? Is that something you think you might have pursued, and do you think it's a good thing or a bad
I,
thing?
yeah, it's a great point you bring up. It's a completely different game now than it was when I grew up in the composition or arranging era. Very, very different now. Because we have software. There
Right.
was none of that was available. So it was all just banging your head at the piano all day long. And you had to be able to play complete phrases so you could hear what it sounded like. There was no playback. I think young composers don't realize how great that opportunity is because they can hear it played back note at a time if they want. You don't have to play a whole phrase and complete it. Now, it offers a great opportunity because the notation makes it easier to write the music out, hear what it's going to sound like, print out parts immediately on demand. You think about when I grew up doing this, you and I grew up doing this. You had to do it all by hand. So you'd write a score, you'd write a 3 or 4 line sketch in concert pitch of the whole piece. Then you'd have to transfer that to the actual template music that you were going to write that for. And then somebody, usually me, would have to copy parts, every one of the parts.
Yep.
And that's an enormous. Luckily, by the time I was teaching in college, I got my students to do that, that wanted to be, and that's what they should have been doing. And some of them still bring it up today. But anyway, uh,
A great way
it's
for them to learn, though.
yeah. Back when I started in the business, commercial publishing was the only way to do it. There was no self-publishing, or not anything that needs to be mentioned. You were always connected to a company, a publishing company. If and I've been doing that since 1977. So for me, I'm going through that question you asked now in my mind. Moving forward, do I want to stay with the company I've been with forever, or do I want to try the self-publishing thing? If I tell my students and I tell any young composers now, I would absolutely self-publish if I had to do it again. Absolutely. And the better you can work in social media, that even helps a lot more because
Oh yeah.
that's where you're going to sell it. You don't The advantage you have with a publisher is they do the advertising for you. They make the albums, they promote the music, they put it up on YouTube, they record it. with a real group, not just with MIDI. So those are advantages of being with a publisher. But my gosh, when you think you work through a traditional, you guys are listening, guys and gals, if you want to compose with a publisher, you're going to make 10% is all you make on
Right.
is the royalty that you'll make on retail. That's the same as books too. 10%, because you're not having to do any of the cost to get it prepared.
Right.
Somebody
They're
else is
doing all the heavy lifting.
right. So when you self-publish, you got to do all that yourself. So it'd be great if you and someone else that you would want to go into this with you, because really your creative time needs to be in putting the notes on the page, not in figuring out the best Instagram account to get, maybe somebody else helps you with that or something. But I absolutely would have done it that way if I was starting now. No question about it. Because now
Yeah.
you're making 100%.
Right. You're making whatever you're getting, you're making it.
Yeah.
And then
Now,
you
if you're good and a piece takes off because of word of mouth, and that's how they do take off. It's because of word of mouth.
oh
It's
yeah.
not. It's not because of anything else, And it can really be super effective, and you can do quite well. And I think it's important that we don't talk about this much. I taught music seminar for 30 years at Furman with composers, and we never, until I started insisting the last few years, we never talked about really how to make a living writing music. We always wanted to talk about the art. That was what, and it is the most important thing. But if you're going to do it, it'd be okay if you made a living doing it too. You know,
Yeah. Well, and that was, that's I've written arrangements for years and years, and I've got all these little sketches and fragments, and it's one of the things when I retired, I thought I was going to try and spend some more time on, and then I took another full-time job, so that's going to have to wait a while. But it's daunting when you look at it, the process of how you focus on that, and how can you sustain life outside that teaching degree if that's where you started.
that's right. Yeah, and that's why music students and young composers need to learn about ASCAP and BMI and how that kind of works, because that becomes an important part of your life. People don't think that there's much to it, but actually there is. It can help sustain you in a royalty sense. That really works out to your favor, because even though the rules are different for that all over the world, it's still important to have an understanding of that. Look at both organizations and the other ones that are out there. This is performance royalty situations, and just see which one works the best for you, and get involved and get into that.
Right. That's so much of I don't know what your college experience was like, but coming through college for me, so much of it was we didn't get any of the business end of the job, from the education standpoint or from the composition or any of those kinds of things. Um, when
No,
you
we
and I
don't.
were
We
when
don't.
you and I were younger, many people in the band and orchestral world look down on marching band and look down on the drum and bugle corps world. We all grew up with that kind of stigma. But you've alluded to the fact that the marching band is the way that you got your entree into that world.
I
The
I find that you're right. And it's been a kind of a thumbprint on my whole career, is I've been the marching band guy. But hopefully the last 30 years have shown that that's not where my head is necessarily.
right,
And the world is a different place now. I don't find that academia looks down on marching band and drum corps like it used to. I mean, there's still some of it, but not. It's completely changed, and a lot of it's because of the percussion teachers. They've Because they do it all, and
right,
for them, drum corps drumming is the Olympics for them. I mean, they get to play more notes than they'll ever play. And so, and a lot of the great percussion instructors are leading universities are advocates. And with PASIC and all the things that it does, it loves both worlds. It embraces both worlds, both new compositions with found instruments and drum corps,
yeah.
and competitive marching band. So that attitude, thankfully, has changed, but it's still there. I'm sure there are still people that see me as I was back in the early '80s when I was doing exclusively marching band.
Right. Well, and that's, that's I find and have found that primarily, our generation is the ones that had that attitude more so than, and as the younger teachers come up, it seems to be more, more accepted and more part of the landscape, so shall we say, as opposed to a sub, genre of it all.
Yeah.
Um, is there
In
any?
fact,
Go
in
ahead.
fact, it's amazing of how many prominent wind ensemble conductors at the university level also have been involved either marching in drum corps or teaching drum corps. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
so there's not just the snub your nose because you did marching thing like was happening when I came through. Not that way at all anymore.
Right. That's I was teaching with Kevin LaBeouf and Drew Dickey at Cavaliers several years ago, and we went down and our boys got to perform with UT's band, with Jerry conducting on a concert, and being part of that ensemble, and that was just incredible. Just
Yeah.
incredible. What a great experience for the kids. What a great experience for the audience. That he was, so, one of the champions of our profession is willing to engage, in that way. I thought was really, really cool. Um, is there any experience or several experiences that stand out in your career, whether it be performing or writing or, conducting, as a real highlight for you?
Well, that one's kind of easy for me. I've had many occasions because I'm the band guy. Many occasions to work with composer John Williams.
Yeah.
3 concerts with the President's own U.S. Marine Band, with him conducting and me helping do some of the transcriptions, being there for rehearsals, being there for the performances, being there for lunches, just chatting about the world. And there was the 3 Marine concerts. There was a 2003, 2004 Rose Bowl, which he wrote the national anthem for both the University of Michigan and USC bands and conducted it. And I was invited because I was the band guy. I had to do the marching percussion parts. I
Got
mean,
it.
because he didn't. I had to do the drill, and so I got to go on the trip and got to hang out with him for 4 days in Pasadena and several other things. That's for me clearly the highlight. Um, when he did the arrangement of the national anthem, they always want to do a pre-record in case the weather's bad or the something doesn't work or it falls apart or something like that.
Right.
People criticize that, but everybody does that. They do and we did it with the Indianapolis Symphony Winds in Indianapolis, and he was going to fly in and do the recording. But the band had to get warmed up, and he wasn't there yet. So we didn't want to rehearse his brand new national anthem. We wanted to do what he wanted to do with it.
Right.
So Paul Lavender, who was also there with me, said he passed out and said, "Just do Raiders March from Raiders of the Lost Ark." So I'm doing Raiders on the podium with the band was incredible, and here he comes walking in from the airport, waving through the glass of the recording studio while I'm listening to his Raiders March. I was out of body experience. It was unbelievable.
How
No,
cool.
keep going. Keep going. Sounds good. No, we'll stop here. Let you take over.
Exactly. We'll step out of the way, let you
Yeah,
have it.
yeah.
Um, talking to Freddie, Chris. I've never had the chance to meet him, but talking to Freddie's son, Chris, he said that John's also just one of the nicest humans he's ever been around.
To a fault. Absolutely. He actually has to have his management team around him to keep that from happening. You know, uh,
Yeah.
it, it, you know, he's one of the composers that you can't do permit. Can't get permission to arrange of his music. It's not because of him. It's because of his management team.
Yeah.
And he would say, "Sure." He's just super, super nice and super knowledgeable. And like
Oh yeah.
every word out of his mouth is like it was crafted by a wordsmith somewhere. I mean, it's just beautiful, beautiful guy.
Yeah, and I think that says a lot for you that he has the trust because your arrangements are some of the very few that were, he did give permission and even his management team gave permission for. Uh, so that's certainly a huge
Well,
compliment from him
those
to you.
those later, it is. There were only three or four of us on all three concerts. There were only three or four people that he allowed to transcribe the music. He had that trust in us. Uh, and it was special. But then we did come out with a commemorative series, his signature uh, arrangements, transcriptions of these works that are for sale, and some of them aren't available yet. But this started in 2003. The last concert was in 2023. They've been coming out one or two a year during that course of time. They're expensive, but they're the real deal. I mean, they're the ones for the Marines. There's nothing left out. There's nothing watered down.
Oh yeah, that's I've heard the Star Wars suite is yeah, that is ridiculously hard, but it's also ridiculously well done.
and
Um,
and ridiculously fun to play.
oh
And
yeah,
that's why I like them. I have a community band that was started 10 years ago. It's mainly Furman graduates, alumni who are band directors. It's almost a pro or semi-pro band. It's not real community members. People come in
right.
from all over the South to do it. And once every 5 or 6 years, we'll do an all John Williams concert, and they love it because it's hard as nails, but man, is it fun to play. And the audience eats it up.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
they're gonna love it.
Yeah.
Um, well, give us a little insight into your life outside of music. Do you have any specific hobbies or pastimes or anything that keep you occupied?
I'm kind of dull, but I do. I love I love golfing.
Okay.
I haven't played as much in the last year and a half because I had a groin injury last fall, and man, those last forever. And so I just couldn't. I wasn't as mobile, but I love playing golf. That's really my only thing. My wife and I love to go to Las Vegas.
Okay.
Um, we love to go to the shows. You know,
And that
gamble.
even in and of itself, that's again that goes back to the
Yeah,
music side of things. But that's an opportunity for you to be a consumer as opposed to a creator.
yeah.
Uh, you know
And
that's
those shows are world class, just
oh
world
yeah,
class.
absolutely. Well, if you were going to offer students or directors, and I mean directors of any age, but especially, with your vast experience, if you were going to offer young students or young directors any insight or advice on considering a composition career or, something in the arranging and in the arts that way, what would you tell them?
Well, this I'm probably the old curmudgeon here. I know I'm old school in this thought, but it's very important to me, and it's changing a little bit because of the nature of our world. And that is, if you want to compose music, in my opinion, it should be about the notes, not the story. And that's where things are changing. A lot of new composers have these fantastic build up and fantastic narrative stories that these pieces tell, but they don't spend as much time on the actual notes that they write. I really, that's my one piece of advice. Now, not that the story can't be important or the situation can't be important or all of that. Of course it is, but when it's all done, it's about the notes. It's about the actual notes that you write. That's what's going to be remembered forever or forgotten forever. Are the notes. The story's not going to take it on its full length.
Right. That's what's going to last. That's what's going to stay with people in the end. Um, and
I think, and again, not that the other stuff is not important. It certainly is, and if it inspires you to write great notes, then the story is fantastic. I'm all for it, but it should not be more important than the notes.
Well,
You
and
know,
here's one last question for you, and I didn't put this, I sent you some things to think about, but where do you think music education is headed? As you've retired officially and now back at it, and I just retired, and I have concerns about where I we obviously, all of us, feel very strongly about the need for music in kids' lives, but where do you see music education, and do you feel like we're moving into a more positive era for that, or are we going to need to be the ones to defend the rights of kids to have that in their lives?
well, I'm absolutely with you. It is essential that it be in our kids' lives. I mean, every study you can ever think of or read will tell you that it's maybe the most important thing in terms of developing young minds. It's important to be there. I think our universities are doing a much better job at preparing teachers.
I agree.
Way better. Now, some of the avenues that we take off on after that may get run a little afoul uh, in terms of importance orders of what's important in the music education program. I think it's important that we have a great balance between stand up and sit down time. It doesn't become all one or all the other. I think that, and now there are so many pathways to choose when we put in WGI, color guard percussion, indoor winds, all those other things. It can easily change the pathways a little bit and the boundaries of what's most important at any given time. And I think we need to consider that, but I do think we're in a very tolerant age for all things music. Um, there was a time when we went through it, about halfway through our careers, we really thought we might lose almost everything.
Yeah,
California took a lot of music programs away. They're back now. Um, and I think we've established through some of the organizations, BOA and others, DCI, that this is important in kids' lives with these huge crowds and how people support it. And we're not just band nerds anymore. We're the cool kids. So I think we're in a good place there. I just hope our new young teachers and new young composers can stay focused on the fundamentals of what makes it work, and that's it. It's the notes. It's the thing that you felt as a kid and said, I want to do this. I got to do this. For whatever reason.
yeah. Well, and that's, I go back to early in my, journey on the process, and, you remember how the music made you feel, not necessarily, and then I went and heard the story, but I remember what it made me feel, and that's always been the most important part for me. You have any final thoughts or anything for our listeners that might be viewing this at some point?
Yeah, I wish my dogs would stop barking. I'm sorry. I don't know if you can probably hear that. No, I think we're in an exciting era at the time for band and band music. We've never had opportunities like this before. Let's don't mess them up by being unprofessional, by making more out of stuff than should be. And that's really my final word. I think charge on. You're prepared. Go do it. Have a great time.
Yeah, it's I know I told people I got to go get up every day and go do something I love, and that's not many people get to do that, and so for all the folks who are following us in that pathway, I hope they enjoy the career, and for all the students, I hope they were as blessed as you and I were along the way. Jay, I can't thank you enough for doing this. This is a valuable resource for our students and our directors, and we really appreciate you joining us and being a part of this. And I hope that it will be something that will be a positive for everybody down the road.
Well, Alan, thank you for having me on, and it's great to catch up with you. We
Yes.
need to do this. We need to do this more often.
Well, and
But
that's, one of the things of the pandemic was several of those
yeah,
things, these Zoom things. That may be the only positive thing that came out of the pandemic is several of us were able to catch back up. But yeah, I've enjoyed catching up a little bit, and maybe we can get some old friends on a Zoom call sometime soon.
that'd be fun. That'd be
You
fun.
take care of yourself, and we will get this posted, and I'll let you know when this all heads up.
Thanks, Alan. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, take care.